Hi, and welcome to BMIT's series on the Digital Operational Resilience Act, or as better known in the industry, DORA. For those of you working in the financial services sector, you undoubtedly have heard of DORA, its implementation, and it's coming into force in January of 2025. This piece of legislation targets organizations in the financial services sector. However, its principles of IT governance, risk management, and cybersecurity are crucial for every business in today's digital age. Cybersecurity has become a term that everybody is very familiar with. The increase in cyber threats, attacks, have made cybersecurity even more important. And DORA, one of its primary requirements is the availability of an ICT framework. But security and cybersecurity in particular are extremely important when we are dealing with this piece of legislation, but also other EU legislations that are coming into force very soon. Today, to discuss cybersecurity frameworks, what they are, why they are essential to safeguard an organization's IT environment, I have Ivan Galea, BMIT's product manager, and Christian Bajada, head of information security at BMIT. Thank you for joining me. A very basic question. What are the key elements that make up a strong and effective cybersecurity framework? Christian.
Thank you, David. Let's talk about the main element, right? What is the objective of the cybersecurity framework? And basically, it's about managing risk to our organization. And in order to do that, let's say most common published frameworks, whether it's NIST, whether it's COBIT, they would usually follow these 5 steps, where first you need to identify the asset that you need to protect, whether if it's something static, a business process, or data transfers. We need to implement the appropriate safeguards for these assets. We need to detect anything that might go wrong on these assets, new elements of risk, respond to such occurrences, and eventually the capability to recover from such incidents.
But why have a framework in the first place? What makes a framework so effective?
So basically, David, you can just listen to what goes around you, just take bits and pieces from what you hear in the news, and you start building your security controls. However, the lack of having such a framework, without having such a framework, you won't have these controls, let's say, working together and some sort of governance over these controls. So you won't have someone or something that is checking the inputs, that the inputs are accurate, and that the outputs that such thing is giving you are also accurate. So without this system, you don't have who will guard the guards kind of thing. The framework makes this whole engine, all components run together, which will effectively result in the reduction of risks. And to be honest, I have seen, and I was participant in some cases, where you just buy a new security tool, but when it's not integrated in the ISMS or a framework of sorts, it can go abandoned, and nobody at all would notice.
In fact, we were discussing earlier IT management. So in a way, a framework is almost a tool to help the organization to manage not only its information, its ICT infrastructure, but also its governance, its risk management, its assessments. I think BMIT does something similar on a much smaller scale with the CHIS controls, right?
Yeah.
The assessment.
The CHIS version 8, basically, we use the CHIS version 8 framework to assess organizations. They use the same 5 functions: the identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. It is deriving from the NIST. It is, I think, the most popular and most globally adopted cybersecurity framework. We mentioned governance. NIST in February took out version 2 framework of their cybersecurity framework, and they put in the heart of the framework, they put governance, IT governance. And this is, again, we mentioned it in earlier sessions, where we are now seeing organization embracing governance with their cybersecurity framework. Because like you mentioned, Chris, you have organizations which believe that a tool is the savior to all their cybersecurity threats, or a tool to safeguard them from all these IT risks that they have, etc. But in reality, without proper governance on those systems and tools, it's a complete failure, or most probably end up as a complete failure in the long run. Why? Because you can implement a tool without reviewing these tools on a regular basis, without maintaining these tools on a regular basis. They will end up being a complete failure. So again, governance and cybersecurity and IT management come into they sort of interlace together. So,
but how challenging is it to implement a cybersecurity framework, irrespective of whichever framework we choose? But how difficult? What are the common challenges? But more than that, how challenging is it to maintain compliance with that framework?
The crucial starting point, it has to be management support. The implementation of such a framework, it has to come from management. You will not be effective as just let's say the IT compliance person or any kind of compliance person to just try to enforce these security controls and push them onto somebody else. It is simply the reporting structures they are. You won't have some sort of authority over others, and often the priority that your security controls will be given, important they are, they will largely wane after a few months, even sometimes weeks, since the initiative starts. So management support is absolutely crucial, and that would be like the most biggest pitfall that I would often see.
I completely agree. I mean, getting that executive sponsor right on board is crucial. Securing that budget, especially on not just for cybersecurity, but and even in IT management in general, so to speak. But we're seeing a lot of entities now shifting towards getting that seat for the CISO sort of role on the strategy, even on a strategy level. So it used to be like, although he's a chief, but he's not really included within the business strategic discussions and so on. But now they are being more involved. These roles are being more involved on a strategic level. So
I think we're also seeing training for board and C-level on cybersecurity. So we're not talking about, how to hack a VM, where they are literally taught what the framework is, why it works, why they should be focused on it. So at least there's that change that is slowly happening. And probably also with DORA, I think that this is going to be crucial where management needs to understand the importance of these frameworks, the importance of their implementation. But one thing that I find very interesting is how do you actually assess the effectiveness of that framework, and how does that fit in also in the concept of resilience building in terms of its effectiveness?
So let's say the traditional way of doing such assessments, and it's also specified in one of the articles of DORA, is that of doing the internal audit. So the internal audit, this would be part of the 3 lines of defense, and even though it's called internal, you can still outsource it to an organization who will do this for you, basically. And over there, we'll be assessing whether these moving parts that Ivan talked about, they are actually working together, whether the controls are effective and so on. However, you don't really need to wait until that yearly internal audit as well. I mean, there are some KPIs that you can check, which are specific to that particular security control, that you can do. And even ones that are as blatant, one that comes to mind, for instance, is security incidents, how many security incidents we have, and more importantly, how many recurrent security incidents we have. Because if we have like repeated the same thing happening over and over again,
you have a problem.
It means we have a problem and we are doing nothing about it. That is the
You can also measure the effectiveness of the response on those incidents, and then again, tying it down to the
implement a new security control, and we can see that perhaps these incidents went down. These were contained. That is when we are looking at the positive side, obviously, of implementation of a security control.
We're talking about also challenges in an earlier question. Someone has to implement, someone has to manage, and someone has to monitor these cyber security frameworks in action. Now, some large organizations may be able to invest. They might already have existing resources. We mentioned also the one-size-fits-all approach that DORA and other pieces of EU legislation tend to have. So how can one go about implementing a framework without upsetting the balance and the operational existence of an organization? Because it's not just a question of setting up a framework, it's also how do we manage it using the resources. It's a challenge for smaller businesses and organizations. How should they approach this?
It's let's say, security, more regulations, more compliance requirements, and the more security controls we introduce, undoubtedly you're introducing more friction, you are introducing more work that needs to be done. Without some sort of investment and more commitment towards resources, you won't manage. So if you are already up to the brim, I don't think that you can really take any more, because I would be lying and saying that you can achieve everything while also having to, even the very act of having to report now to regulators, specifically say on DORA, it increases work for the organization, even though you may be already covering all the requirements, say because you have an established ISMS like ISO 27001 already in place. So work will definitely increase. But what I can say is you need to do a little bit of prioritization on the functions that and on the risks that are most critical to your organization first. At least you need to, because that is what the ICT risk management framework is mainly tells you to do, after all. And if you never did anything, don't expect that you can go from 0 to 100, because you will be kind of lying to yourself if you think that somehow you can achieve suddenly. You had absolutely no requirements for security, and suddenly you expect to have a framework and an ISMS in place, implemented in just a couple of months.
And cybersecurity is a moving goalpost. I mean, it's not something that you achieve and then you say, we're done, we're good. I mean, it's, again, new threats come out, like you said, new legislations, new controls. It's new technology, So
what's valid today will not be valid in 6 months' time.
However, the existence of the framework should not change. The threats will change, but if the framework is will not change, I mean, it will change, but but it's more strategic. So I would expect, for instance, that if you adopt the framework today, you won't have to radically change that framework, because one of the points is also addressing these changing external threats that come from outside, and you have that process already in place to, say, have a committee that discusses what new security controls should be implemented and whether our present security controls are effective, for instance.
But that brings up another issue for those that have started to implement a cybersecurity framework or an ICT framework or whatever type of framework. The evolution of threats, the changes that are happening within technology, how does that impact in terms of resources within the organization? Because it's fine, we talk about evolving threats, new attack vectors, but we're in the security business, so it should be something that we are constantly aware of. But the chances are that someone in an organization is not following the latest CVEs, because that is not their job. And yet they need to be conscious of what is going to impact the whole process behind their cybersecurity framework. So how is that balance achieved within the organization? And if they don't have the resources, what are the options?
I would refer to the standard, let's say, risk treatment options here. So you can simply avoid the risk by saying, hey, I am going to close that business unit because I cannot handle the threats that are being faced. So you can reduce the risk if you find some resources that you can assign to, or else you can perhaps obtain some outside help in order to achieve that. If the resource issue is strictly limited to manpower, you can also kind of transfer the risk and have somebody else doing that function for you. So it's these are the options. I mean, if you don't have anyone, to actually tackle or any tool to tackle that security control. However, also it's we can do some of our present operations a little bit more efficiently as well. So I would take a look, a bit of introspection, I would say, and
see what you're doing, see what's missing or what has been done,
or what's totally inefficient and ineffective. So if you strive towards sometimes you can achieve 80% of what's required with 20% of effort, and we should look towards these low-hanging fruits, because sometimes we can improve our security posture so much without a lot of effort. And I really think that anybody can do that, given just a little bit of guidance, perhaps.
Thank you very much, Christian, Evan. Very, very interesting. And once again, thank you for joining me.